Hello, and welcome back to the Delve podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing the difference between emotional dumping and getting support. My name is Allie. I'm a staff therapist here at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
And I'm Adam. I'm the executive and clinical director at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
Here at Delve Psych, we offer individual, couples, group, and family therapy. So if you're interested in our services, head on over to delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com. And do check out our Substack at delvepsych.substack.com. And please help us spread the word with this podcast. We're not trying for fame here. We don't plan to run any ads, so it's very listener friendly. We just want to add value and be helpful to as many people as possible. So please do spread the word, share the love of this podcast. It'd be very helpful.
Please do it. And also, I'm pretty sure I just banged my mic really loudly in the middle of that. My apologies, dear listener. But that's how you know that we record this live every time.
Live. We're not lip syncing over here. I didn't notice, so maybe the listener wouldn't even, but
good.
Okay. So I thought this would be a good topic because I've had clients sort of pose this fear in therapy of like, I'm worried about dumping on my friends. Like, I want to tell my friends what's going on in my life. I want to vent to them. I want to get support, but like, where's the line between venting to our friends in a healthy way and emotional dumping? So I thought that could be a really good topic that would be helpful for a lot of people today.
Yeah, I'm glad that these clients are trying to self-monitor, and at the same time, you can only do so much self-monitoring. At some point, you're going to need feedback from other people about what they need from you and what they're experiencing from you. Also, some people don't care if you dump on them. So it kind of depends on the exact nature of your relationship with them. I think some things to pay attention to are, obviously just frequency, right? Like, how often are we doing this with the other person? And intensity, how intense are the ideas that we're bringing up to them? But I go back to some degree, we've created this artificiality in our culture around supporting one another. And what were Homo heidelbergensis and friends doing when they were in a cave, right? If somebody had a problem, they would sit and talk about it, insofar as Homo heidelbergensis could talk, which we think is probably somewhat limited. But anyway, regardless, like, if you needed support, you went to your community. To some degree, this idea of like, oh, well, that's for a therapist and you shouldn't talk to your family or your friends or your community about this, or your clergy people about it. It should go to a therapist. To some degree, that's an artificial lay-on that we've added to society later. You could argue that that's an improvement, that there's a reason why we do that, and that's a good thing. There's another argument to be made that says that we've added a degree of artificiality to the general problem of humans supporting humans.
I love the way you framed that, because, yeah, this idea of therapy is something, we've constructed, right? And maybe it is an improvement. But at the same time, like way back when in the caveman days, like, we were just supporting each other. There wasn't a therapist, a designated person to bring these issues to. But yeah, I've heard the sentiment like, oh, should I really be bringing my friends all of this emotionality? Should I just save that for my therapist? Like, is this too much for them? Type of conundrum I've heard before.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you're in this pathway toward trying to grow in your ability to self-soothe, then I do have a bit of a heuristic for you. If your goal is to try to get better at self-soothing, that doesn't mean don't externally soothe ever. It just means try some other stuff first. So what I usually try to encourage people, if they tend to be either hyperverbal, hyper interrelational in their processing methods, what I usually try to ask them to do is, we're going to build a sequential process here. So step one, you're going to try to solve this on your own. in your own mind. You're not writing it down, you're not journaling, you're not calling a friend, nothing. Like step one is you're just going to kind of like think about it a little bit and
Mhm.
see if you can think your way out of it. There are tools and techniques, and we could dig into some of those. But regardless, generally speaking, first pass in your own head. Second pass, externalize it somehow privately. So now you can record a voice note, you can um, journal, you can bullet point notes. You could also kind of take in media. So, like, let's say that I'm really sad about a breakup. I can listen to entire discographies of bands. Looking at you, Death Cab for Cutie, as a way of kind of like externally participating in this emotionality, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's step two, right? So if step one didn't kind of get it, then step two is like, okay, let's make this a little bit more of a formalized, externalized process, but it's still private. Um, Now, depending on what you're trying to achieve, if you're trying to stop dumping on your friends, then the next step would be to go to a therapist. But if you're trying to kind of like build natural supports in your life and participate in the kind of community of care that's already around you, then the next step is to go to friends. It depends on what you're trying to do. But let's go with the closer to the premise here is we're trying to stop dumping on our friends as much. Then the next step is to go to your therapist. Some therapists are comfortable with you kind of like sending a message ahead of time saying like, here are some of the things that I want to talk about on whatever day. Um, I like that. I think that's really useful. What I ask for of my clients is nothing that's about crisis, right? Like if you're actively in crisis, then that's not a good time to be portal messaging your therapist who's hanging out with their family right now. If you're actively in crisis, your primary individual outpatient therapist is not available.
Yeah.
Usually, they're in session with another client or they're hanging out with their child.
Yes.
Um, so that's got to go to other resources that are more equipped to manage crises. That's 911, 988 is usually much better in most circumstances and getting better every day in most states. Um, then but if it's below the level of crisis, then it's just like, here's kind of where I'm at right now. Can we talk about this during our next session? I think that's great. I think that's like in the moment processing. I get a snapshot of your mentality. I love that stuff. I think it's so useful. Especially because then I get the
Mhm.
contrast. 4 days later you're in a different place, and I get to see not only like where were you 3 days after our session, but then also where were you 4 days after that moment, and how has that evolution kind of developed. So that's really helpful. And then after all of that, let's say you've gone through all these steps, and maybe you've also slotted in a call a parent, call a family member, talk to your partner, tell your dog, etc. Then eventually you're at this place where it's like, all right, I tried all the internal things, I tried some external private things, I tried a professional therapist. Now it's time. That's the signal that it is okay to tell your friends about
Mm.
this thing that you're going through.
I like that heuristic, especially if you're trying to work on, especially if you've gotten the feedback, like, hey, like from a friend, like, hey, I really, I love you. I want to be there for you. It's, but I've just noticed that like you've come to me a lot recently about, this thing, and it's just been a lot for me to carry, or it's been hard for me to be there for you, especially if you've gotten that feedback. Okay, maybe we try some other things. I think my biggest way that I like to frame this difference between like emotional dumping and like healthy venting is like just an awareness and a consideration for the other person that's like receiving this,
Yeah.
right? Like we want to be considerate about like the space that this other person's in, the capacity that this other person has. So like, I don't know, I like to um the way that I like to sort of go about this is like asking the other person, hey, I'm really stressed about this thing. Do you have the capacity right now for me to like vent to you about what's going on?
Yeah.
Just like asking if the other person has the capacity. And then the other person can opt in or out. The other person can, that's the invitation for the other person to say, hey, you know what? I'm actually like really overwhelmed myself, or I'm out on a dinner date with my partner, or whatever it is. And like, this is not the time actually. Or the other person can agree to opt into it. Like, hey, yeah, like I love you as a friend. I want to be there. What's going on? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly know, and I know I'm biased here. I'm biased in a couple of ways. One is that I have said before that I've got some very emotionally close male friendships. Two, I am a therapist. But I've had times when a friend tells me 2, 3 days later that they've been like super suffering quietly in their house, and I'm like, you asshole, how the fuck did you not reach out to me? Like, how, like, now there's I jest a little bit because everybody has their own process, and sometimes you need to be private internal and just kind of quietly suffer for a little while. But at the same time, if it was like, but I didn't want to bother, it's like, how dare you? How dare you?
Yeah. I guess I'm similar to you, Adam, in that respect. Cause like I want my friends to come to me and tell me what's going on. I love to be there for them. Maybe we're just a certain type of person, but
You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
um but yeah, I think asking if the other person has the capacity is a really great way to like sort of like, I don't know, take the guesswork out of like, am I like being too much for this person? Am I dumping? Like, do they even want to, hear this from me right now? Like they said, yeah, they gave the green light. So
Right.
great. And I also think too, like, yeah, being aware of like the frequency with which you go to your friends, about, especially if it's about the same, sort of problem or issue you're having. And not saying that you can't go to your friends about like the same struggles, because often things aren't like a quick fix. And often we are over a prolonged period of time, struggling with the same thing. And so I never want my friends to feel like, oh, I already like brought this thing to Allie, so I can't bring this thing to her again. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just thinking if it's like every day, for several days on end, the same thing. And there's really not much change in like, I don't know, I guess partially I'm thinking about it like, are you open to like seeing things differently or a new perspective on what you're coming to your friends with? Um, I don't know. That's where my mind is going right now.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think understanding their capacity is just a basic generosity.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, but also understanding their skill set. If you have
Mm,
a friend who tends to solve problems and you go to them seeking validation and understanding, you're creating your own suffering here. Come on. Um,
right, right.
and but also sometimes you can set up for the friend, here's what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah,
And the better you get at that, the easier it is on them, and the more likely you are to get what you need back from them. Um, so I think that that's a great way to do it, is to sort of say like, am I open to feedback? But tell them whether you're open to feedback.
right. Because if you're not and you don't like say that, then maybe you can't be too upset if they start giving feedback and you're like, wait, 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 I didn't want that. Yeah, I think like definitely when you go to someone, you can totally say like, hey, I'm honestly, I'm not looking for solutions right now. I'm just looking, or any problem solving right now. I'm just looking for validation and a listening ear. Um, you know, and that's totally okay. That's totally one way to approach it. Or maybe you are looking for like, hey, can you help me try to like find some different perspective on this thing? Oh, or I am
Yeah.
looking to try to like figure out a solution to this. But I think that can be helpful too, for both parties, right? So we're not guessing what the other person needs in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a variety of ways to work through emotions, and I think that typically we're pretty unsophisticated in our usage um of the cascade of different options. I don't know if that's the word I want, but like there's
Mm,
so many choices available to us. And I've long wanted to, and I've never actually done the articulation of a kind of a master list of approaches, a master list of strategies. But to just name a few that you can be utilizing, one is external processing, out loud processing with a friend. But processing is an understanding venture. So the goal of processing, if you're doing it, is to develop new perspective and awareness. And it should come with a kind of a decrease in overall agita, if you will, emotional activation. Problem solving is another one, and you'll get decreased agita with that one because you've found some solution, and that can be very clarifying. But there's also just a strategy of just like being one with the emotional experience. And in that case, you will not notice a change in agita, or you won't notice a decrease in the agita. That's not the point. If it happens to decrease, that's a fluke, but we're not trying to achieve that. You also have strategies like distraction and suppression, like take all that emotion and just stuff it down,
mm,
or take all that emotion and literally ignore it and go do something else. Um, those get frowned upon in the current zeitgeist. They're still useful. Don't just do those things, do other things too. But those are useful strategies. Sometimes I just can't tackle this right now, and distracting from it for a minute's fine.
right.
Sometimes I need to suppress it because I'm in the middle of a job interview. Those are all useful strategies. You've got artistic processing, which is like somehow producing something that has some connection to the emotional experience that you're having. You've also got receiving artistic or linguistic understanding. So like listening to a poet, listening to a song, listening to music that resonates with it, or listening to an orator who is able to kind of explain the mentality, like just a mere kinship with that can help to work your way through some of the emotional experience that you're having. Um, you've got some cognitive strategies, especially from um, like DBT. There's a bunch of cognitive strategies that you can use to interact with your emotionality in this way, that way, or the other. You've got meaning making strategies, narrativizing, and developing a story about it. Um, you've also got just sort of like if I am in the company of a friend or a person that helps me to connect to my own identity, even if I'm talking to them or being around them in a way that does not actually engage the content of my suffering. If
Yeah.
I'm just around them, so other parts of myself, my being, are validated, that will help overall. Um,
Hmm.
there's meditation, which can sometimes decrease the agita, sometimes it doesn't, but it just sort of seeks awareness of the thing. I mean, that's just off the top of my head.
Yeah, we should definitely put that all in a master list, like you were saying. Like there are so many different ways to interact with our emotions and process, and I think like we do tend to just go for like the oh, I'm going to go straight to my friends. I'm going to go straight to my friends. Is it which isn't necessarily bad or the wrong option. It's just there's other options there for you, and if you are getting the feedback from friends that like it has been a lot for them to receive um you know what you're bringing to them, then yeah, let's go to some of these other options, right? Let's listen
Absolutely.
to some music, let's write a narrative, let's um meditate, you know, like there's so many other options available to us that we like haven't thought about.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of us should be developing all of these strategies. All of us should be working toward a greater degree of emotional agility, and um and the moments of suffering are really just an opportunity, an invitation from the world for each of us to begin to, or to continue that development. And I just think that's such a, it can be such a gift. The fact that you are suffering is sad, and I hate that for you. We
Yeah.
all suffer. And the fact that you are suffering in this moment is such a gift to the growth that you can experience, and that then you can kind of participate in for others later. If you have children, for instance, that suffering you're doing right now is parenting. Even if you don't have children yet, if you're doing that work now and you mean to have children later, that's your parenting the child that you haven't even met yet. And it's just, and even if you're not parenting, even if you just are around another person who's on their own journey, they're watching you, they're seeing how you deal with life, they're learning from you. You have a romantic partner, they're around you, their life and their experience is affected by your aura. And so the more that you're doing these things, it is love, it is caretaking, it is building, it is healing, it is changing the world, starting at the end of your fingertips.
Hmm. Oh, I love that framing. That's a really awesome way to think about it. Um, yeah, taking this as like an opportunity. Um, yeah, I guess sort of to bring this conversation to a close here. Like, yeah, I think if people are worried about whether they're dumping on their friends versus like getting support from them in a more healthy way. First of all, I think that's a great sign that you're like thinking about your friends and they like are aware of how this could be affecting them and you are being considerate. So I think number one, like you're already like thinking about the other person's capacity. Whereas I think someone who's just like constantly frequently dumping isn't going to be thinking about, oh, is this something that like my friends have the capacity for right now? Like, is this like, how are they being affected by this? Like, I don't know that that person is really taking the time to sit and reflect about whether that's the case. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, certainly asking them, hey, do you have the capacity for this right now? And just being aware of the frequency with which you do and maybe the duration of which you do. Like if we're on the phone with our friend for 3 hours, you know, are we talking about the one thing for 3 hours? Um,
And be in community with them and allow them to say, like you say that, but I also know you. If one of your best friends or your mom called you and said, I'm really stuck, I need to talk, and 3 hours later you're still talking about the one thing, I bet you're fine.
I'm fine. I don't know that everyone else is fine, but I'm fine.
Right. Right. And so again, you get to decide for yourself. You set
Yeah.
your own boundaries, and the mandate as the receiver is for you to communicate your need.
Yeah.
And if you don't have one and you didn't, and you say like, bring it, come on, I'm here. That's up to you.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
surprise yourself along the way and you're at the end of that 4 hour phone call and you're like, man, I am exhausted and I just picked a fight with my partner. Notice that too.
Right.
So,
Right. As the receiver, you're allowed to set your own boundaries with your friend of like what you can handle. It doesn't make you a bad friend for being like, hey, you know what? I noticed that 4 hour phone call. I thought I could handle it. And actually I realized it was a lot for me and I really carried it. It's okay. It's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. Yeah. Any last thoughts?
as you see me picking up my phone here, I'm remembering that a friend, um, we've kind of already processed this, but a friend of mine was kind of going through something, and it's been a few days since we've talked about it, and I'm just gonna send a check-in on you text.
Yeah. I love that.
Also, it's a boy. Boys talk about feelings.
Yay! Yes, let's let's normalize that more. I love it. Okay. I love this quote. You are a reaction to your parents. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a very like direct, succinct way of putting it, but so true. For better or worse, like you see what you experienced what they did or didn't do, and you're going to react to that.
Yeah, and I really debated the word parents because it is so. I have clients that are adopted. I used to work a job where I was the caretaker for kids that were temporarily displaced from their homes. And sometimes they were displaced from their homes because their parent wasn't around any longer, or because their parent wasn't able to care for them anymore. Sometimes it was already a caregiver that wasn't even a parent, and then that caregiver couldn't care for them any longer. It was that sort of a system. And I, learned a lot in that job. But I do think that one of the things is that there's this kind of debate about like, how much does blood matter? Historically, it has, and clearly we can kind of identify some of the limitations in which, like a biological parent might not be that important in your life, but they end up creating a context with which we are then birthed into existence. And so even if they're gone
Right.
from your life, they had something to do with the context that you end up then having to deal with. And in that way, it is different than the people who end up taking care of you. It is also the people who end up taking care of you, even if you don't have your parents around, are there because of the context that your parents created. And so it's very much like at the end of the day, we're inextricably linked with these people, um, who did the things that they did and are the way they are and had whatever circumstance happened to them that they did. And then everything else is an offshoot from there. And that thus begins our reaction. Sometimes it's 9 months later that we begin the process of actually reacting. But like, yeah, they're there. They're there in us.
Uh, yeah, which is hard because I could see some people being like, I hate that. I don't want to be inextricably linked to these people who I think were horrible parents, or, like so you're telling me like my whole reality is just a reaction to my parents? Like, what? Like, that's not fair. I don't want that to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, in some ways, life is fuck you, start experiencing, and then fuck you, stop experiencing.
My God. I mean, yeah, if you want to really put it, as direct as possible. Yeah. I mean, I guess we could sum it all down to that, huh?
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for listening today. I hope you took some nuggets from it. Again, help us spread the word with this podcast. And if you're interested in our services, head on over to delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com. And do check out our Substack at delvepsych.substack.com. See everyone next week.
Later.
Later.
I'll edit that out.
That was funny. You just laughed. I was like, okay.